is how to compose engaging melodies, melodies that people would be interested in and want to hear over and over. The study of composition is very, very big, and today we're just dipping our toe into the water. This will not be comprehensive. All of the points could go deeper. We're not studying everything or all of the ways to compose melodies. But if you follow these 5 secrets, even as a beginner in writing melodies, you can create engaging melodies. All right, let's begin. I thought it would be helpful for students if I could write an acrostic to represent each of the words of the 5 secrets. So the acrostic is rinse. R stands for resting tone. I stands for interesting rhythm. N stands for neighbors. S stands for scale. And E stands for empty space. Okay, let's start with the resting tone. The resting tone is called also the tonal center. And what you need to know is that our system of music here in the western part of the world is called tonality. It's a system of music. And there's 3 basic ideas. The one is all notes have a push-pull relationship with each other, sort of like magnets. The second one is there is one most important note. It's the center or the focal point, and we call that note the resting tone or the tonal center. And the third one is that this system is based on the natural laws of acoustics. For example, if you pull a string, the way it vibrates, or if you blow and make an instrument like a trumpet or something like that, just the way waves naturally work contribute to this system. Okay, so the resting tone. Here is an example of what I mean by this, the importance of the resting tone. In this example, the red square is the resting tone. That's Do. So this series goes Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti. Okay, so after you listen to that, you're thinking, well, that was fine, but it really didn't end, didn't it? It didn't come to rest. It didn't come to a resting point. Okay, so if we go on, now it feels like it could end. And that's just an example of how you can use this system of notes pulling and pushing on each other to create an engaging melody. Remember that the resting tone is the focal point and the center. One last thing, the green square over here is So. It's the 5th note of the scale. And so we would say this is going So, Do, or 5, 1. If you were to number the chords, it would be 5, 1. That is a very, very strong pull in music from 5 to 1, and we can use that to our advantage. Okay, the first secret then was using the resting tone. I, interesting rhythm. We have spent a lot of time talking about creating interesting rhythms by starting with like a rhythm word, some nugget that's interesting in itself, and then either repeating it or morphing it or changing it, bending it, twisting it in different ways to create new ideas. So in this case, I composed a melody and I used this rhythm, taka-dee-ta-dee. Okay, so I didn't use, the rhythm I used was taka-mi. Da-da-da-da-da. That was my original idea. And so I repeated it some for the first part, and then over here I changed it to ta-dimi, ta-dee, ta-dimi, but came back to taka-mi, taka me at the end. So it kind of ties back into this original thing. So I've got an interesting nugget, da 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 da, and then I use that to create my melody. Okay, so that's just a quick example of what you could do. Now this example is a melody that someone else wrote, Sonny Rollins. It's called St. Thomas, and he uses interesting rhythms to create an engaging melody. Now with the bass line. Okay, we may talk about that one again later. Interesting rhythm. So we have resting tone, interesting rhythm, and now neighbors. Okay, so neighbors in music, those are notes that are next to each other. So C, D, E, F, G, they're next to each other in the alphabet. C and D are neighbors, D and E, etc. And then when you use Songmaker, when you see notes that are stepping down like that, like these step down, those are neighbors. You go into the very next note possible. Okay, you can see already in this song that almost all of the notes are neighbors. They're next to each other. And there's a few places where there are leaps, and we'll talk about those in a minute. Okay, here we go. Okay, so Twinkle Twinkle Little Star is clearly an engaging melody because we have been singing it for hundreds of years. And so if something has lasted that long, you could try to figure out, well, what is it about that melody that we like? And I'll just make a quick comment. You see that it starts with a leap. I've been saying you need to use neighbors, and here it breaks the rule right away. So what the point is, music, if you make all steps, all neighbors in your music, that might not be the most interesting music you could make. But if you use a careful mix, if you use mostly neighbors, and if you treat the leaps and skips and jumps carefully, then it will make it sound engaging. So we have a leap, and then after that, he moves by the song moves by step, and then comes down. Here's another leap, down by step. Another leap, down by step. So what you do after the leaps are kind of important, and the basic point is to use mostly neighbors and be careful how you mix. Okay, here's another one. Mostly neighbors. Okay, so once again, this is a tune that everyone knows and likes. It's catchy, and I wanted to point out, after the leap, when it leaps up, it usually comes back down by a step. So if you leap up, you want to come back down by step, the next note. Or if you leap down, then come back up the next step. So treating the leaps and steps together. So a careful mix of neighbors. Okay, the next one is scale. We have resting tone, interesting rhythm, neighbors, scale. A scale is a set of notes. For example, if you were thinking about numbers, a set in numbers we could say like odd numbers or even numbers, multiples of 3. The point is, we're not using all of the numbers, just a particular set. That's the way it works with a scale. Instead of using all 12 of the available notes. You just pick certain ones out of there and you use those. Okay, so what I did here is I took a familiar melody and I changed the scale. Instead of a major scale, I made a minor scale. This is Twinkle Twinkle in the minor scale. Okay, changes the character, doesn't it? This next one is a scale you may hear like in the Middle East or Malaysia or India. Okay, so the scale that you choose really changes the character of your melody. Okay, so we had resting tone, interesting rhythm, neighbors, scale, and empty space. E for empty space. Okay, so this is an example of, it starts with the ostinatos, and then when the melody begins, you'll hear how it uses empty space. Okay, so there's a lot of empty space there. I would like to go back to St. Thomas and think of this melody in terms of all the things we've talked about so far. The resting tone is the red one, and you'll notice how many times it's used, especially at the ends of phrases. So it's centering around the resting tone. And then it has an interesting rhythm, which we talked about the first time. Most of the notes are moving by step. Scale, it uses a major scale, and there's tons of empty space, as you can see, but just by looking. Okay, let's listen to this once again in terms of the entire system, the rinse system. Okay, so there is another example of the entire system. All right, I think you are ready to begin writing and composing engaging melodies. Good luck.